It's the Fanatec GT World Challenge Europe, powered by AWS, and it's the first weekend of the Endurance Cup for 2023. Where better to start than the Temple of Speed, the Autodromo Nazionale Monza. For the first time in 2 years, we open the season with this magnificent race circuit. Good morning to you all, wherever you are watching from. I'm Jake Sanson, beside me, John Watson. We are ready for a sensational season of sports car racing at the pinnacle of GT.
And that little picture within a picture tells some of the story. It's quite chilly here. Early hours at Monza, 14.7 and the ambient track. So you can see the track still indicating there's been rain overnight. There's been a lot of rain over the last 2 or 3 days. There may be rain over the weekend. We're waiting to find out. But in the meantime, there is the field of 55 cars, 165 drivers. The only reason they haven't a larger field is that the pits aren't large enough to incorporate another 10 cars or 5 teams or whatever. But here at Monza, absolutely one of my all-time favorite racetracks, Curva Grande. Now the corners at Monza, they do have corner numbers, but the corners are so famous they've all got individual corner names. Curva Grande. I raced here at Curva Grande 1971 in a Formula 2 car, and you came out of the last corner on a lap parabolica, and it was flat out all the way down past the pits, flat out all the way through Curva Grande, all the way down to Lesmo 1. There was no chicane on the entry to Curva Grande. There was no chicane on the entry down into the first of the 2 Lesmo corners. I mean, old days, don't call them good old days. Oh look, to the right, that is part of the original banking.
Yep, the Monzanapolis.
That's coming out of parabolica. This was a dual purpose racetrack. The banking is still there, and that is the exit of the banking that will bring you back onto the start-finish straight. I mean, the emotion, it's pouring out of me. You know, I can see at the last race here, I think in Formula 1, might have been 61 when the banking was used as part of the road track and the bank track. And of course, they had an Indianapolis race here as well. The fastest lap on that was on the pure bank circuit. I think the fastest race lap, this is about 1957 to 58, was 176 miles an hour. And the good old boys in the American Roadster-style race cars sat there chomping on a cigar, and they were courageous racing drivers.
Amazing. I mean, it's fantastic to hear your recollection. I mean, you were talking about how much you love this place. I mean, let's be fair, in 1981, you weren't a big fan of Lesmo 2.
And that was a part of the history of the corner of the circuit. The corner's changed, of course. And that was just an error I made on the exit of the corner, illustrating the difference in that period, the curbing, compared to where we are today. Here we see the exit of the Ascari chicane. Now, there are a number of corners around the circuit, Lesmo 1, Lesmo 2, and the exit of the Ascari. Those curbs, if you transgress, you will end up getting a time penalty because track limits are going to be observed. 3 corners in principle, Lesmo 1, Lesmo 2, and Ascari. But I mean, just the camera's panning around the racetrack, picking up the mountains in the background. It is, to me, it's what motor racing, it's the essence of motor racing. And because of the history, we're sitting in a commentary booth overlooking the start-finish straight. Directly beneath us are what they used to call the tribunes, where you would have the great and the good would come and the race fans. And I mean, just all around the circuit, history oozes out of every crack in the tarmac.
It really does. Well, I walked here for the first time yesterday morning, and I tell you what, you could feel the history through your soles. It really is a magnificent venue. What do we need to tell you coming into the 2023 season? Well, last year, of course, we had the privilege of having 5 different overall race crews take victory from the 5 races. It's what we get quite regularly now in the world of the GT World Challenge. You get such an incredible waft of talent and so many incredible teams coming into the fore that you get such a varied balance of competition, and that's what makes this balance of performance such an incredible formula. Every single squad, every single car, every single driver combination has got an amazing opportunity to win these races. Here we have the Variante Goodyear going into the first chicane. Of course, it's changed its name over the years. But this circuit, what a phenomenal spectacle, John.
Yeah, so it's a 3.6 mile circuit, 5.7 kilometers, 11 turns around the corner, around the racetrack. You see the first sector, second sector, then that combines to give you your lap time. And I mean, the circuit is a different circuit to those that I raced on initially. But since, what, I think middle 70s, chicanes coming into what we call, turn remember, this is called Variante Retrieval. So the first chicane is called the Retrieval. The second chicane after Curva Grande is the Roggia. So Retrieval and Roggia, but very often we'll just say the first chicane, the second chicane. And then we go into the corner names, first by Lesmo 1, which has been tightened up on the exit to slow down the exit. Lesmo 2, what used to be a really quick corner with a ground effect car, it was just about flat. I mean, that was 140 mile an hour entry. Now it's a much slower corner again, principally because this is a national park, and there's only a limited amount of work that can be done within the scale of the racetrack. So they aren't able to cut back and give loads of runoff area. So the alternative was to slow particularly Lesmo 2 down, and that's why on the map you can see it's a much more acute turn than, for example, back in the middle or early 80s when it was a much more open and free-flowing corner. But there was the curbing that was the thing. I ran the curbing, and the left side wheels dropped off the outside of the curb, but the curb was a sort of a domed style curb, and it meant that the bottom of the car then was riding along the curb, and it just sort of rotated the car around, and that's what led to the spin. But anyway, we're at a thoroughly modern Grade 1 F1 licensed racetrack, and I mean, whether you're here in April or you come in September or you come throughout the year, it is, to me, just a truly magnificent facility. It is a racetrack, it's a state park, a national park, a municipal park. Not as big as the biggest park. Now here's a question. You may not have thought about it, but do you know what the largest municipal park in Europe is?
I don't actually know the answer, no.
Well, actually, strangely enough, it's in Dublin. And it's,
no way.
It's Phoenix Park. It is the largest municipal park, and it also has got a great history of motor racing.
I was just going to say, yeah, absolutely. It's the funny thing about large national parks in Europe. There is Raffaele Marcello for the Acodis ASP team. The Mercedes-Benz had a strong year last year, looking for a lot more from the 2023 season, but with a driver of the caliber of Raffaele Marcello in the car, anything is possible in 2023.
I mean, this driver pairing, I mean, it's just been a stellar one, and in fact, all the way through the Mercedes-AMG GT3 crews have got such a good car. Now, one of the things we were going to have to pick up, and we'll so hopefully guide you through it, is Lorenzo Patrese, the son of Riccardo Patrese, is the teams fundamentally are the same, but the graphics on the car in some cases are quite different. So we've seen, particularly with the Acodis team, that they have here, what do you call Raffaele Marcello's car has got a lot of blue on it. BMW sitting at the front of the pit lane, that's one of the WRT BMWs. You could easily say it goes to Fafa as well. There you go. He's been around the block, a Brazilian driver, and a pretty impressive guy.
Yes, indeed. He spent the last part, the large majority of the 2022 season out in Japan, obviously racing the BMW M4 in Super GT, and he's come back to European racing again this year. Dries van Tor leading the way for WRT. This is the crew that in the number 30 car had such a successful run in 2022, but obviously the 23 crew wanting to go a little better. They also have Charles Weerts and Sheldon van der Linde in that particular car. We saw Lorenzo Patrese a little earlier on. This is obviously still very new water for him. I saw him a couple of seasons ago when he was racing in the FIA Karting European Championship, and I tell you, you raced against Riccardo Patrese.
Indeed.
I can tell you, the apple does not fall very far from the tree. Riccardo was prolific in karting back in the day, winning the World Championship back in 1973, I think he did. And Lorenzo didn't quite get to win the championship, but certainly proved his strength at the front of fields.
No, I'm sure that his career is as large as essentially he wants it to go. Now, obviously, his dad got into Formula One in 1970, I think it was 78.
It was, yeah.
Bit of a problem in that year for Riccardo because he was a little bit of a wild child. I don't think Lorenzo is the same as dad was in his formative years as a race driver.
The good thing is Riccardo has told him how not to do it. So he's been a great teacher. He's been a great teacher.
I think there's a mum and a dad in that.
Indeed.
So Team Parker with their...
A fantastic lineup, actually, this year.
It's just unbelievable. I mean, wherever you look, it's just well, I'm just going to look through and see what we've got. The number of cars, Audi is best represented this weekend, 11 cars, Mercedes 10, Porsche 9. And, I mean, it's just, the grid is absolutely heaving.
Well, keep an eye on Derek Pierce. He'll obviously be sharing the car with Kian Juris, and also Evans will be in the car as well. There's the number 40. That is the Trezor Orange 1. That is the combination of Marshall, Feller and Drudi.
I mean, that's a car. I mean, you look through the field. I looked through the field And wherever you look, I'm talking about the pro entries rather than some of the other. We've got Pro-Am, we've got bronze, gold, silver, but the pro entries are the ones that are most likely to see a result or victory come from. Nevertheless, in any of the other categories, they're just, wherever you look, so strong. Ricardo Feller, I mean, just unbelievable.
Yeah, one of Switzerland's top GT drivers at the moment, really starting to make some big waves in the European Endurance Cup. Did a fantastic job last year, looking to continue to up the process this year. There is the crew from Boutsen VDS, of course, Thierry Boutsen and Mark van der Straten, guiding things as they get themselves up to scratch. Adam Iteki is in the car for the time being, and he shares that, of course, with Alberto De Folco and Aurelion Panis, who comes to us from the world of touring cars.
So, coming up to the conclusion of the opening lap, coming into Parabolica, as we now look at the cars as they go down Main straight into the first chicane, the Retrieval. So this is a new shot for this year. This is the drone shot, and I won't drone on too much about it, but it'll give us a lot more options and choices. And I mean, it's an aerial view I've never had opportunity to see before. So there is the corner, and Valentino Rossi, not behind the wheel at the minute, so it goes to Faufus. That's Rossi's 46 in his second season. And be interesting to see, having spent the first year in the WRT Audi, how he gets on with the WRT BMW. Two quite different cars in how they perform on track. I mean, I had a look at these cars yesterday in the garage. I mean, these things are like space shuttle. I mean, they're just so sophisticated. Everything about it. You know, where's the touring car? Well, there it is in the front. You see that little blue and white badge that says BMW? That's the touring car bit.
That's it. Well, I'm kind of feeling for Auguste Faufus and Maxime Martin this weekend, because they've turned up, they're getting themselves ready for a race meeting, and then everywhere they go in the paddock, there's Valentino Rossi fans. Did you see how long the queues were yesterday for everybody trying to get just a quick signature on a photograph? It's like, what about us? We're here. We're putting in a good job as well.
Well, do you know what? I think actually they're quite happy, because it gives them, they don't have anybody bothering them particularly, or certainly going from the hospitality to the garage. They can just do that almost anonymously, and all you have to do is shout as you walk past the 46-car garage, "Oh, there's Valentino, he's in the..." So anyway, that's a bit of being naughty.
No, indeed. Excellent. So everybody just warming up the tyres and brakes. Takes about 3 laps or so for everything to really start to dial in and warm up, and you need that before you start pushing, because obviously once you hit the brakes going into these tight chicanes, I mean, that approach, obviously, to that first chicane, you come at that very fast indeed. You need to be getting ready to get on the brakes at about the 200, 150 meter board marker.
Oh, well,
that's
I
so
think a bit
tough.
deeper. I think it's a bit deeper than that. But anyway, principally, it's the tyre temperature. You've got to get that tyre temperature up into the operating window. Interestingly, yesterday evening, there was what we call a bronze test for bronze teams and drivers. And as Loris Hazemans in the number 12, Come To You Racing, an unusual name, and it's all spelled as one word, Come To You.
Yep.
Best time was a 1:47.6, so that's going to be a benchmark time to see as Marco Bortolotti in the 63 Lamborghini has quickest laps so far, and it's his first flying lap. He's completed 1:49.2. That time is going to drop as Dries van Thor stands in the garage, talks to Maxime Martin, and well, a bit of a joke going on between the two. They're team mates, but they're rivals within the teammate. The 32 and the 46 both want to win.
An early start up in the top 6 for Erwan Battard, the Frenchman who was in GT4 European last year and has stepped up to the GT World Challenge for the 2023 season. So interestingly, coming straight out of the blocks in the Audi, number 26. It'll be interesting to see how he gets on in his first full campaign at this level. Dennis Lind has just put the Barwell Lamborghini up to the top spot on a 1:48.531. These are all banker laps, of course, at the moment.
Yeah,
they're going to get a lot faster than this.
Essentially what's happened is it's the first flying lap, and for many of the drivers, it's the first taste of testing running at Monza. Now, teams do test in the pre-season. Whether any of them have had a chance to test here at Monza, I suspect some have. But when your first flying lap, and it's now Alex Arca's on 20, well, it's been beaten by Christopher Mies, so it's already 1-2 right now. So Christopher Mies 1:47.2, and that actually eclipsed the best lap time Eddie Cheever Jr. in the Sky Tempesta McLaren. Sky Tempesta. One of the, I mean, for some reason, I don't know what it is, but the graphics on that car stand out. When you see it coming to you or you get a glimpse of it, it's one of those cars. Some cars, depending on the colours, the core base colours, but the Sky Tempesta car absolutely is a standout car. There you see it going through, exiting the first chicane, or as we call it, retrieval.
It is truly gorgeous. Chris Froggatt in that car as well, of course. Eddie Cheever the third that we are on board with, because obviously Eddie Cheever the third is Eddie number one's son, but there is an Eddie Cheever the second.
Eddie Cheever number one was Eddie Cheever the second. Eddie Cheever the second was the guy I raced against.
Right.
Eddie Cheever number one, I think, was Eddie Cheever's, grew up, worked in Italy, principally in Rome.
Ah, right.
So then Eddie Cheever the second was the competitor I raced against, and Eddie Cheever the third is, I think, by deduction, the son of Eddie Cheever too.
However, still easier to work out that family's lineage than the Fittipaldis.
Well, yes, that's a sort of complex story. Yes, complex story.
Well, there is the Ferrari crew. Amato Ferrari's boys going very well indeed. And this is, of course, the debut of the new 296. We have been hotly anticipating and awaiting this. And in terms of looks alone, John, that thing's a killer.
I mean, I went into the garage and I spoke to Alessandro Pierguidi, and they had the engine cover off, and I said, where is the engine? I mean, what the 296 has is the successor to the 488. The 296 is a totally different car. First of all, it's got a 6-cylinder V6 motor, whereas the 488 was an 8-cylinder motor. But it's just taken the whole, as a road car, taken it way beyond, and the road car is a part hybrid anyway. I mean, it is an absolute rocket ship as a road car. Waiting to see what it's going to be like on the racetrack, and I suspect it's going to be equally competitive. And it's exciting to see Ferrari bringing in a brand new concept, and they're loaded up with other projects, Formula One, WEC, and racing, well, wherever. So the GT3 program, handed by AF Corsa, will no doubt be a success.
And you've got two pro category driver lineups, of course, with the AF Corsa 296, the number 51 car of Nicolas Nielsen, Alessio Rivera, and Robert Schwartzman, who has come in to the team.
Yes, I saw Robert in the pit lane. I flagged him down. He hadn't a clue who I was. I think he probably still hasn't got a clue.
How dare he?
No, he's very young. And I'm a bit of a Robert Schwartzman fan. So I think he's done a really excellent job in his junior formula, and he's now part of the Ferrari Grand Prix team, let's call it that. He is going off to do some testing beginning of next week in another formula. So it's quite a busy young man, but this is his first full outing as a GT3 driver. And you come out of a single-seater, a high downforce single-seater formula, and you come into what is a very high downforce GT car, but not at the levels of a single-seater. So he's got a lot to learn, and of course the practitioners who have been in this particular discipline or division for all these years, they're very, Jules Gounod, just out of interest, one of those practitioners, has gone quick as 1:46.5, and that is just under 0.4 of a second away from Aurélien Panis. So it's Mercedes, Audi, and then Klaus Bachler in the first of the Porsche.
And for those of you asking the obvious question about Aurélien Panis, any relation to Olivier? Well, yes, of course, he is his son. So
he certainly is.
Working very hard indeed out there at the moment. So Jules Gounod coming towards us, and you can see already that in Sector 1 he was quicker than his own personal best, which was the best of the session, just fractionally down in the second sector, but not by anything massive, although now that the time has changed slightly. We were looking at Marcello. He is about 1/10 of a second away from Jules Gounod's pace, and up to second place now has come Fabian Schiller in the Almanar Mercedes AMG car. That's the 777, the pro category car. Aurélien Panis currently third in the Boutsen VDS Audi, and the Dynamic GT Huber Porsche of Benjamin Barker currently in P4 at the moment, running very deep there. Is there an advantage to getting just that little bit off the line to carry a little bit more dirt?
You can get 2 wheels off the line, but 4 wheels could see your time being deleted. But that lap for Jules Gounod, it was, what was he's done now? That's the 4th lap. So depending on what tire he used, whether it was a new tire or there wouldn't be very many carryovers available. This is the first race of the season. But it was principally the traffic. He had to get round one of the BMWs. So here he goes on to his 5th lap. So into the chicane. It stays off that very high section, but here, as he goes through essentially the exit of it, and this is the retrieval, it's just a slow-in chicane. If you try to hustle it too much, you'll scrub so much speed and end up, you're not going to go very far.
That's the thing. I mean, on turn-in, you probably gain about 0.2 of a second, but on the exit, you lose about 8. So there's no benefit.
I mean, these chicanes, particularly into the retrofilio, you can see the BM that 46 that goes to Farfus bouncing across, and it looks spectacular, makes great images, but isn't quick. You can hustle through certain chicanes and run the curbing but that kind of, you get a big shock load goes into the car, deflects the car if you hit it aggressively or the wrong angle.
And these suspensions are not designed to be given that kind of onslaught, of course, and that's something that here at Monza, it doesn't happen too often, but it's certainly something that you have to be very mindful of right from first practice, because if you start stressing it too much, getting the lap a little bit over the wall, at various points, then it certainly starts to strain at the components, and that really eats at it. When you get to qualifying, you don't have a car that has that same perfect balance anymore.
So just watching Sven Muller in the 54 Dynamic Motorsport Porsche, and look how busy it is coming up into the Ascari chicane.
Well, this is the thing, 55 cars on track, and they're all out together.
Well, you're going to catch pockets of cars all around the racetrack. If you could get a single lap without having any interference from a car directly ahead of you, and Sven Muller still running behind the 46 BMW, and the pace, I mean, literally because of the balance of performance now being so well judged, the difference in overall performance of a Porsche or a BMW or Mercedes in terms of overall, let's say, straight line performance, it all comes down to the aerodynamics. Now, looking at the Porsche, everybody's getting larger and larger, and Porsche's amongst those cars. The car is physically quite large now. The downside of that is, of course, it's a bigger mass to push through the air, to punch through the air. So the top speeds might be fractionally down maybe in a car they would have run 3 or 4 years ago, just simply because the car is that little bit larger.
Another driver that's coming to the world from the world of tin tops, and that is Gilles Magnus, who is now part of the ComTU Audi squad. In the number 11, he has gone second fastest so far. We're watching the treble 8 out on circuit at the moment. That is, of course, driven by Arthur Rougier in the CSA racing squad at the moment, one of the prolific bronze crews. Now, it's interesting we pick up a bronze crew driver here, because I was actually talking yesterday to Ezekiel Perez-Companc of the Mad Panda squad. Yep. He was telling me actually about how the drivers have to approach bronze drivers very, very differently. You'd go for a decent overtake on a gold driver or a silver driver, and that's how you're going to get the move done. With a bronze driver, you almost have to give them another car's width if you're going to make the overtaking move, just because of the unpredictability. I was asking you, do you have to flirt with the white line on the outside of the circuit when you make the overtake?
Well, the other factor that drivers have got to really consider if you're a pro or a silver or a gold or whatever grade of license you have, but if you come up against a bronze driver, and you may not know which driver's in the car, it could be a bronze car, but you don't know whether it is genuine, sort of, if you like to call it, the amateur bronze as opposed to the sort of semi-retired but half professional, is if there is any contact, it will always be the professional driver that will be, regardless of the circumstances, adjudged to be guilty. So it is imperative that if you are coming up against a car that you recognize as a bronze car, it's a bit like an Oxford, when you've got these things called cyclists.
Oh, yes.
You've got to give them about 20 feet of space when you pass them. But the trouble is, most of the roads in the rural part of Oxford are only 18 feet wide.
I used to be one of those. I kind of came away from the whole cycling thing when I realized I was unpopular. Aurélien Panis has now gone to the top spot. He is in the category at the moment, pushing very hard indeed in car number 9. So that's in pro, I do believe. Sorry, in the gold category, he has gone to the top. He's currently 8th overall in the rankings, so 146.900 for him there. As who that is coming towards us, that is the Audi of the number 9. So Aurélien Panis acquitting himself quite well in GTs. Very different task to TCRs, which is what he's used to doing, but he's getting hang of it pretty quickly.
Well, I think Gilles Magnus has done the same thing. I mean, he was racing at the World Motorsport Games, Paul Ricard, at the end of October. I think it might have been in I think it was an Audi at that particular time.
He was, yep.
And I mean, a front-wheel drive touring car is somewhat different to a rear-wheel drive GT3 car. Sheldon van der Linde,
taking over from Dries van Tor, of course, who started the session. We'll see all of the drivers get behind the wheel during this free practice.
So they're just obviously going through the quick cycle of get all 3 drivers in. A bit of smoke coming from the brake ducts on the 46.
That's one of those.
The 99, sorry, that's the Dan Harper car.
It is indeed. That's one of those nothing to worry about, nothing to see here sort of moments, isn't it? From the row racing crew. A little bit of steam, nothing wrong with that. It's all systems currently being checked and monitored. Mess Verhagen and the sister driver in the 998 car that we see there for row racing. There is the other machine, the number 98, which is right up at the sharp end at the moment. Still trying to dial things in. Philip Eng is behind the wheel at the moment.
Yeah, currently that car, although it's in the pits, is 18th quickest on a 147.2, which is 1.1 seconds away from still, well, it's now the 88. Timo Boguslawski is behind, or getting behind the wheel, but it's the Jules Gounon car that still has set the fastest lap. It's just 75 hundredths of a second ahead of Fabian Schiller in another Mercedes AMG GT3, and then Matteo Drudi. But because teams are cycling through, we have to wait and see.
That's not the racetrack, I think you'll find. The Aston Martin that just disappeared off to the left. So I wonder if we're about to see what happened. Here we go.
Oh, that's why a massive, there's a problem. Big front lock up, and he scoots through the gravel. And look at that, oh dear.
How close was that to the barrier? Goodness me.
It's not just that, the speed he went through, Jakob Riegel, the speed he went through the gravel at, I mean, you're going to drag gravel on at the critical part of the exit of the Ascari chicane, and then he himself almost loses it the second time, but all caused by a big front wheel lock up into that Ascari chicane.
Yeah, he won't be popular back in the bullet racing, and he's nearly done it again.
Yes, out at the Ascari, so I mean, his tyres will be dirty. As I was done at the first chicane at the Rock gear.
See, I've done that in the esports lobbies of Fanatec GT, and I've been very unpopular when I've done it, so I have a feeling that it won't be any different for Jakob Riegel when he gets back to the pit lane. What did you do that for, will be the question. Is this the moment that all of the fans in Italy have been waiting for? Not yet. Or is that a change? There is a change of driver.
It is, yes.
But is that going to be Valentino in the car for the first time, or is that Maxime Martin? We'll have to double check, because Augusto Farfus was in the car.
So once the transponder has been clicked over, we'll know for sure.
There's definitely a change.
To you, there is the number 11. That's Gilles Magnus, and that's a pretty impressive run, I think, from the Belgian driver. He's done a good job with the come to you Audi.
Yeah, getting straight up into the top 5 so far.
I mean, running directly behind Matteo Drudi, who is a seasoned, for me, one of those Audi drivers that you always know has got the pace and the ability to deliver. 57, Philip Ellis has just popped up in his Mercedes AMG GT3 up into 4th position. It's just under half a second behind the number 88.
Well, we know there's definitely been a driver change at the number 46 WRT.
There's Farfus.
Sorry, the number 46 BMW, because there is Augusto Farfus out of the car. And he is chatting to the engineers.
And there is Maxime Martin.
So there you go.
By definition, it's got to be. Yeah,
this is
46.
This is the moment that everybody has been waiting for. Valentino Rossi will be out onto the circuit, and he'll be going around this phenomenal circuit. There's the Variante Ascari.
And just gives you an indication of what this Monza Park is like. Because when you see a shot of the circuit from a camera at track level, you don't get any of that. I mean, this is a large municipal park, and you can see all the magnificent trees, and this is half the problem. These trees have got TPUs on them, or the equivalent Italian version of a tree preservation order. So you just can't go in and cut back. And the organization here has had to work within the limits of the circuit itself if they want to make a circuit change. I mean, there was, I read somewhere, I don't know where, on the internet, suggestion that maybe the retrieval, the chicane there, may be deleted. Wouldn't that be amazing? But that may only be a little scurrilous rumor, and we have to wait and see whether that will ever
be
reconfigured just to be a flat-out blast from all the way down from Tamburello all the way through Curva Grande. I mean, Formula One car would be going through there probably about 230 miles an hour.
I cannot help but get excited about that prospect. I was just looking at those pictures from the drone and thinking, these guys are the luckiest joggers and cyclists in the world, aren't they?
I mean, even one of our GT3 cars, if there was no chicane, they're doing probably just under 180 miles an hour coming down into that first chicane, maybe 175 as an average. And by the time that they carried on all the way down, they were doing over 180, 185.
Wow.
It's an awesome thought, and I would love to see it, but it may be that it might be too much for the licensing authorities to make that.
Samantha Tan, the Canadian, getting behind the wheel for the first time in 2023. We'll keep an eye on her progress. She's done a very good job in the North American Ferrari ranks. Speaking of Ferrari, here's the number 71 car. Davide Oregon, Alessandro Peguidi, and the man who's behind the wheel, Antonio Fuoco, who these three, basically, if you crack their arm open, they would have Ferrari written through their bone marrow, wouldn't they?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it is a full-on factory effort via the, of course, the team. And Valentino makes his way through Curva Grande. Valentino Rossi, that's not Valentino.
No, that's not.
That's Come To You.
That's the car behind that you want. Yeah, there it is, the WRT BMW.
Look at the gravel already on the exit of that chicane down at the Roggia. So Valentino, and just one of the things I noticed with him in his first season in car racing, in the Audi, he seemed to be sitting, and I've mentioned it to the team on a couple of occasions, he seemed to be sitting, what I would say, over the steering wheel, much in the manner you might ride a motorcycle, when you're over the tank.
Yeah.
And I want to see whether now in the BMW, he's actually maybe made an adjustment to how he sits in the car. And it looked just briefly as if he's maybe sitting in what I would call a more natural race car seat position.
Well, I had the pleasure, as the Mercedes overshoots completely in the retrofilio, and does the Mercedes. Now, is there oil down? Because there's several drivers there that have locked up.
I think that might have been a sympathy. The McLaren looked like it was a sympathy outbreak. I don't know whether there may be something on the track we can't see.
Well, there is Mario Zug in the Windward Mercedes. I was just going to come back to finish your point about Valentino Rossi. Did actually watch him at the Dubai 24 Hours at the beginning of the year, and I tell you what, his manner, his composure, his relaxation with this new BMW contract that he's got, he seems so at home with it. He seems very laid back, very relaxed, even more so than he was in GT racing last year.
I mean, he is an exceptionally professional competitor.
Yeah.
And I mean, I know the amount of commitment he's putting into his four-wheel motorsport career, and everything about him, and even within the team, and talking to some of the his fellow teammates, not necessarily his own co-drivers. Just the way Valentino approaches it is, they think that's a pretty impressive effort. Yeah,
it's a very different format of racing to what he's done before, which was obviously a very solo effort. And his attitude in Dubai, when I was there, was, I'm not going to talk much to people. I'm not going to do anything with television. I'm here to do a team job. I'm here to work with my drivers. I'm here to get the chemistry working with my drivers. That's my job. That's my duty. I'm not going to make this about me. This isn't the Valentino Rossi show. This is the BMW show. And that's exactly the right attitude to come in. When you're that prolific a person and you're used to the limelight all the time, he's already got the team dynamic thing down pat.
Arasu goes across the line currently in 24th position, 147.5, and scope for a fair bit of improvement. So he currently 1.3 seconds away from the time set by the 88.
It's the slightest bit of gravel he caught up there as he came through the retrieval. That's another big problem that you can have through the first chicane. You get the first corner nailed, you think, right, I can get on the power now, and it's that little bit of impatience, that little bit of impetuousness that kind of just drags the car over to the edge of that curb, and you kick up the gravel, and that costs you another 4-5 tenths.
Well, that's an illustration of why you want to, if you're going to run the curb, don't run it to where the wheel drops off the other side. So into Lesmo 1. There used to be about, where the green is, that used to be the barrier on the outside of Lesmo. It was used to be literally, you ran up against the barrier. It was very, very close to the side of the racetrack.
It's just crazy
that's
now,
one
isn't
of the
it?
few areas here at Monza where you can see out of the exit of Lesmo 2, just they have managed, by agreement, I don't know what was done, but they've got a lot more runoff than there was previous years, way back certainly going into the good old days.
Well, we saw the number 32 car currently being driven by Sheldon van der Linde out on circuit in the WRT car, but down in the pits we can hear from Dries van Toor.
Dries, obviously a new car for this season and a new third driver in the team as well.
Yeah, I mean, he's not so different than his brother, luckily, so it's still the same family, and I mean, congrats to their parents. I think they made two very, very fast racing boys, so no, it's a pleasure to work with Sheldon now after working with Kelvin for so many years, and like you said, it's a new challenge, a new team, new car, sorry. So yeah, looking forward to accept this challenge and to make the best out of it.
How does the BMW compare to the Audi that you were so used to driving?
It's quite different, of course. I mean, with the engine in the front, it's you cannot really compare. You have to drive so different. Everything goes differently. Everything goes a bit slower in some areas. So it has pros and cons. And at the moment, we have to figure out which ones are the best ones and which one we have to keep. And it's a big task. But I think we are well prepared or well set up to accept it.
Well, obviously, WRT have got such a huge history within the championship of success. Do you think it's reasonable to be fighting for the championship this year?
Of course, I mean, we hope so. It would be weird to say no, but we just have to be realistic that, I mean, we are accepting a new challenge. But of course, as you said, the WRT has some good people working here, and I think we can make it big steps soon or quick. And I know that the car is in a good window, so that's not the case where we have to work on. But it's just making sure to get all those things together. I mean, with the Audi, we have been working for so many years. We knew everything inside out, and this is now different, and it's those kind of things that's going to make a difference. It's not that the car is too slow or whatever, but it's a thing that as a team we have to work together and try to make sure that everything works the best.
Have a great season. Thanks very much, Dries.
Interesting what Dries is saying, and I'll try and decipher it for you. In essence, obviously, the difference between the Audi and the BMW are fundamental. One was a mid-engine, rear-engine car, the other is a mid-engine, front-engine car. I think one of the areas where they're trying to get to grips with the BMW is A, switching on the tyre, but maybe in particular in low-speed corners, where the Audi, for example, it was a much more front-engine car, sort of front-end car.
Now that is a very, very big mistake.
Yep, and that's going to destroy one set of tyres pretty quickly. So I'd imagine all 4 tyres will have big flat spots, and you can see just when he gets onto the grass, it still continues to, the grass of course is saturated.
Well, that was a wake-up call for Florian Schulze, wasn't
absolutely.
it?
But just to go back to this issue of the difference, the Audi was very much what I call a front-end race car, and I think when you had your career fundamentally in a front-engine car, a nose bias car as the Audi was, then when you come into the BMW, which has got a different characteristic, how do you make the car do what you want it to do? And that's, I think, where the team are fundamentally trying to sort of nibble away to give the drivers the kind of response on the lower speed corners, as at the same time getting tyre temperature, getting the front tyres to work in that critical tyre temperature zone.
So thanks to Gemma Scott for catching up with Dries van Toor. She'll be with us all season, of course, as usual, grabbing all of the bits and pieces down in pit lane. The 2 cars that we saw going off at the Retrieval, by the way, for those who were wanting to pick up on that, were Arthur Rougier, and we also had Henrique Chaves in the Garage 59 McLaren, the 188. They were the ones that drifted off the... sorry, no, it wasn't Arthur Rougier, it was the Mercedes of Lorenzo Ferrari. I do apologise. We also saw Florian Schulze just going off the road there at turn 1, and also I picked up that the 85, that's Clement Schmidt in the Grasser Lamborghini. They've just been speeding in the pit lane, 51.5 kilometers per hour. Now, we get to talk about this now because there have been some regulation changes this year regarding pit lane speed limits.
I mean, in the race, certainly you get a 5-second penalty. Will be taken at the pit stop that follows. But of course, it's a different thing in which is now the test session we're watching.
So, as it currently is now, you know, during testing or free practice sessions or whatever, you know, if it's 51 kilometers an hour over, you get a fine of €50 per kilometer over the 50 kilometer an hour limit, with the speed being rounded up to the next full kilometer an hour. So that's €100 they've just been fined there, unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very small increment over what the limit is, but the limiters are set and they're normally extremely accurate. And of course, maybe it could be a problem from the driver, or maybe didn't get the speed limit button pressed early enough coming in, or maybe released it too early going out.
Stephen Pellet in the CLRT Porsche, one of the drivers in the Bronze Cup this year. They obviously had the bronze test that ran last night, and that was a little bit indicative as to what we're going to see from the bronze crews this year. Obviously, with it being slightly different conditions yesterday, it was slightly cooler temperatures than we've got now, and it had been raining very heavily on Thursday. A little bit intermittent changeable conditions with high-ish winds yesterday. but it's expected to be dry and bright all day today. No chance of rain is what we've been told, but rain could return tomorrow.
I think there's a possibility of rain tomorrow. We're waiting to see. I think it's a moving target right now, the weather forecasting. And again, just we cut away to this camera angle as we see the Mercedes getting back on track. So it's not the first car we've seen getting it wrong going down into the retrieval chicane. And as a consequence, 44 has been somewhat, Palette in the Porsche has been slightly compromised because that will have affected his exit.
I do believe
that first chicane.
I do believe that was Klaus Bachler in the 911 Porsche that went off the pure racing car. And it's very difficult, of course, when you do go wide to get the car up to speed again, because it's on a circuit like Monza, when you've got so many fast straights into heavy stopping, heavy braking points, it's all about confidence. You have to know that the car is going to stop and turn you in and out of corners.
I mean, it's tire temperature in part. It's also just your own judgment. But if you've been in the pits and you've made a change or a driver change has taken place, the tire temperature will fall away quite rapidly. And the ambient temperature, just looking to see what it is currently, is about just over 12 degrees Celsius. It's relatively low, and that just takes another couple of laps as we see the car that Adam Carroll, who is now a part of the WRT team, climbs aboard.
Is that Lewis Proctor getting in, actually? I think it might be.
Maybe, okay.
Might be Lewis Proctor. But that is Adam getting out, I do believe. And they're obviously also sharing that car with Tim Whale. Very experienced racer, Tim Whale. But this is the sister car, of course, to Valentino Rossi's Italian barn dance that he's having this weekend with the fans. And there's 4 cars in total in BMW M Team WRT, and they all have a different grade. So you've got 2 pro cars, 1 gold and 1 bronze, and this is the bronze car.
Yep. Just another driver we talked about a little bit earlier, Robert Schwartzman, in the 51 Ferrari, currently only down in 44th position. He's only done 5 laps, so it's not a massive amount of laps. Some have done as many. Patrick Niederhauser has done 10. The Renauer Porsche has done 11. Alex Fontana in the other Porsche, so 8 to 10 laps is about the norm. And there is Valentino Rossi in.
This is the model maker's dream, isn't it? The esports modders are going bananas at this view at the moment because they're already working and slaving away trying to get their car and helmet and suit designs looking accurate. And I have a feeling that by the time we get to the next round of the Endurance Cup at Paul Ricard, there's already going to be 1,000 fans clamoring with a little die-cast version.
Yep.
And it'll be so accurate, it'll be scary.
So McLaren comes into the pits.
Is this the car that went off at turn 1? Is this Enrique Chavez?
Well, they're showing Guerra behind the wheel at the minute. No, beg pardon, that's not, I'm looking at the wrong car.
No, it is the number 5, isn't it?
It's Charlie Fagg behind the wheel.
Indeed, so that car was down at the back for quite a long time, the Optima
still
McLaren.
is.
It's 48th. I mean, they've climbed a few places, but yeah, an interesting start for the Optima McLaren. They do seem to have some teething problems. Considering they're a gold car, they would not have expected to be in the bottom half of the timing sheets.
Well, right now, the best McLaren is in 15th place, Chavez with a 147.1. But there are 3 other McLarens are running 36th, 42nd, and 49th.
And the leading pro car is, of course, the leading car overall, and that is the Accordes ASP team Mercedes, currently being driven by Timo Boguslavski. Marius Zug is in the Winwood Racing car, along with Bourne and Schumacher. That is David Schumacher, of course, who is the son of Williams Formula 1 Grand Prix winner Ralf Schumacher.
So David has done a lot of Formula 3 racing over the last number of seasons, and I don't know why he's come and decided to do this, but I'll tell you what, he'll find this is even more competitive in many respects than the single-seater formula he's been racing in.
He's not the first Schumacher to go sports car racing, of course, because Ralf had a fairly decent time in GTs and DTM, if you can call that a sports car. It was Silhouette, and then, of course, Michael in Group C back in the day.
Yeah, Michael did a little bit of Group C. In fact, remember the very day that he came in, he and Hans-Hauer Frentzen were part of a young, I think, and also the Austrian young...
Karl Wendlinger.
Karl Wendlinger, the 3 of them. And that was the master plan of Jochen Neerpasch, I think Neerpasch at Mercedes, to have a young driver car, and all the old seasoned drivers are, oh my goodness, you can't give a car of that level of performance to such young, immature drivers. Well, it didn't take them very long to make a mark, and Michael Schumacher, Frentzen, and Wendlinger all went on and had very illustrious careers. Michael, of course, being a 7 times world champion.
I have a very beautiful little story in relation to Schumacher's time in Group C at Monza. There's a friend of mine who's a very esteemed mechanic, Steve Briggs. He asked me once, I know you want to grow some vegetables in your garden, Jake. I've got some tyres for you if you want to grow things in the tyres, which a lot of people do. And he said, you can have one. And I happened to pick up a very fat Goodyear slick, and written on the side of it in chalk, back in the day as it would have been, is SCHUMNZ. So that was clearly a tyre planned to be Michael Schumacher's, to be run at Monza. So there are currently potatoes growing in that tyre.
Jake, keep it, because that could become a part of your pension plan.
It certainly could, couldn't it? I'm not telling anybody where it's kept. Anyway, back onto the circuit today, and we've got
Samantha Tan.
Samantha Tan.
Yep.
And already acquitting herself very quickly. The car is going relatively well to start things off.
Well, in fact, looks like Samantha might have vacated it.
Yes, it's Tatumla Lopez that's now got behind the wheel. You're right. A nice driver change there. And let's take a look at things by class at the moment, because I know that there are going to be those people who want to see how things are getting on by class. Top 5 in Pro are filling the top 6 at the moment. Raffaele Marcello has now just climbed aboard the Acodis ASPT Mercedes. Mauro Engel has gone into the Almanar Mercedes. They're second at the moment. The Tracer Orange 1, Mattia Drudi currently in third. And the ComTU Racing Audi with Gilles Magnus still at the wheel. He's been at that quite a while, actually, in the number 11 Audi. Did I just hear a...
Heard tire squeal.
I heard a tyre squeal. I think somebody's gone off, maybe even at the Parabolica. So we'll have to pick that up in a moment. And in 5th position in that class at the moment is the Santolog Junior Audi of, well, it's Patrick Niederhauser. It's funny because you've got Patrick Niederhauser and Marvin Kirchhofer in the same field. I can remember when they were banging wheels with Dean Stoneman in GP3 about 8 years ago at Sochi. And here they are having a great career in the GT World Challenge. It's amazing how drivers find their way into this fabulous championship to get themselves onto the Spa 24-hour winners list. They really do want that in the title, don't they?
I mean, you go through your single-seater career, and in most cases, it stalls out. It's very difficult to make progress unless there's a significant amount of funding behind you. But Patrick Niederhauser has just actually improved up to 6th position, and Niederhauser is again one of the Audi drivers who we have watched and been impressed with, and we know the pace is there. So there's the 71.
Well, we were right, actually, John. We did hear tyres squealing because Cesar Gazzo in the Boutsen VDS Audi, he went off at turn 11 and rejoined. So there is Robert Schwartzman in the AF Corsa Spa-Francorchamps. Here is the Lamborghini coming through. Oh, that's not the best angle.
I'm surprised. I don't know which of the 3 drivers is behind the wheel, but that is the car that Caldarelli and Marco Bortolotti are in.
It is Bortolotti behind the wheel. That's a rare error for him.
There's no reason for me to know why he would attack the curb so aggressively.
So Clement Schmidt bringing the Grasser Racing Lamborghini into the garage, never mind into the pits. So they've clearly got some adjustments to make. Whether that's a recurring problem or they just feel they want to make a more advanced setup change, we'll have to keep an eye on it. Ferrari doing likewise.
The limited amount of space in the pit lane, I think it's safer, frankly, that if you want to make a change to your car, to push it back into your garage, and there you're safe, and you can have as many people working on the car as you would need.
Yeah, it's particularly tough. I mean, we were talking about this at the top of the program. I mean, you mentioned it, John. You know, there would be more cars on the grid than the 53 we currently have, but obviously there's no space in the pit lane to do it. And this is kind of one of the interesting debates that links to Grand Prix racing in a sense that, you know, why don't we have an 11th, 12th, 13th team? It's because there's no space in the pits to accommodate them, and it's the same problem here.
Well, I mean, the Monza pits are a very long pit lane, but when you get 55 cars, it fills up pretty quickly. And while I think on occasions I think they had a couple of temporary pits at one point, I don't remember how many years back, but ideally we've got 55 competitors. It's a phenomenal field. And in fact, just looking at timing and scoring, Mauro Engel, who we haven't seen anything of so far in the Mercedes team Alkmaar, that car's gone second quickest 75/100ths of a second. Well, actually, that was the car maybe Fabian Schiller was behind the wheel of.
He
so
was.
It is. So Mauro Engel's taken over from Fabian Schiller.
Yes, indeed. I mean, they will do this rotation all the way through free practice, of course. Robert Schwartzman's currently behind the wheel, technically, of the 51, or those showing up as behind the wheel, although they're actually in pit lane at the moment. Mattia Drudi is as well.
There's Marcello down into the second chicane, the Roggia. So
look at how much gravel's gone down there now.
there's been a load of gravel there for quite a long time, and obviously it's being built up because people drop a wheel off the curb, they drag more on, and it becomes very much a one-line exit out of the Roggia chicane. So Raffaele Marcello doing what he does on the limit every corner.
So we're looking at the order at the Pro Cup at the present moment in time. It's worth picking this up because we did start talking about it in a little bit of detail. Raffaele Marcello and Mauro Engel in the two Mercedes cars, two different squads of course, but they are running first and second. The red bar for Mattia Drudi indicates that he is currently in pit lane at the moment in the Audi, so he is not on circuit, but they have gone third quickest at the moment. Then Frederik Vervisch, another of the TCR converts to come into the GT World Challenge this year. He's now running in fourth position in the number 11 Audi, although fifth overall, I should point out. Simon Gachet is now in the Santanok Audi, and they are sixth overall, fifth in class. And then you've got to go down to 12th place, Lorenzo Ferrari in the second of the Acodis ASP Mercedes. They are 12th overall, but they are sixth in the Pro Cup category at the moment. Rounding out the top 10 of the Pro Cup category, Sven Muller in the Dynamic Huber Racing Porsche, Charles Wirtz in the WRT BMW, the Row Racing car of Nick Yellerly, and then it is Jordan Pepper in the Iron Lynx Lamborghini.
Again, looking through the top 10 overall, not just in individual classes, looking Russell Ward. That car is fourth overall, Russell Ward, in the gold category, but Lorenzo Patrese, we were talking about him earlier, is overall eighth quickest in his Audi. So Russell Ward, you can see hustling his way through Ascari, but having to find a way with three cars directly ahead of him. His lap times, you can see in that timing and scoring, Sector 1 is down, Sector 2 has been really hammered by catching up to the traffic, so dives down the inside. Will he find a way through? Will the Audis sweep? Well, both Audis have let him go, particularly the bronze one. So Russell Ward continues on his way, but this lap has been totally compromised.
Indeed it has. So in the top 5 at the Pro Cup at the moment, as we mentioned, Russell Ward, the fastest of the gold cars in the Winward Racing Mercedes, and then Adam Eteki in the Boutsen VDS Audi number 9, currently in second in the category. David Schumacher is the sister Winward Racing Mercedes AMG driver, currently in third position. Then the ComTU Racing Audi of Max Hofer, Callan Williams, former Formula 2 driver, I think, WRT BMW number 30, currently in fifth position. And then the Iron Lynx Lamborghini of Rolf Inaychen. And then at the bottom end, still that Optima Motorsport McLaren having difficulties. Now it's Dean McDonald at the wheel. But yeah, frustrating. I did catch up with Dean, and he did say, we'll see how things go. Things are a bit interesting. The Bronze Cup positions. Kiko Galbaiti in the Tresor Attempto Audi, currently leading the rankings at the moment. 7th overall and leading in the Bronze Cup. Then the Dynamic GT Huber Porsche of Marius Naken, Owen Creed in the CSA Audi 3rd, Joel Sturm in the Pure RX Sing Porsche. It should be racing, but they've replaced the A with an X. We'll try and not to trip over that too many times over the season. The Garage 59 McLaren of Louis Pret, and then we have Hebert Motorsport Porsche of Alfred Renoir, who is next up. And then it is the Sky Tempesta McLaren of Chris Froggatt, who is now behind the wheel of the 93. They are currently 7th, 1.3 seconds off the top, but still pushing on. And then the car that's in the pits at the moment is Florian Scholzer, the Get Speed Mercedes that we saw going sideways, Tokyo drift style, into the Rettifilio about 15 minutes ago.
So Kiko Galbiati has come across the line in his Audi and still remains 7th overall.
This is very impressive from this man, Lorenzo Patrese, leading in the silver category. And I tell you what, he's right up in the top 10 immediately.
No, I noticed he was up in 8th position. But just watching how Patrese came through the Ascari chicane, he knows what it is to drive a racing car. That looked committed, the car looked good. He didn't overuse any of the curbing through the chicane, again on the exit parabolica, you know, being very, very precise. Okay, his times are down half a second, or just about half a second in both those sectors. Nevertheless, interesting just to see how Patrese Jr. is going about his job, and he's doing a good job.
Well, absolutely. And in an age when every racing driver under the sun seems to have a spectacular and garish helmet design, when you look at Lorenzo Patrese out on the circuit, he has very much nodded to his father's same helmet design. It's quite beautiful when you think, simplicity is the mother of invention.
Helmet designs going back to the 70s and 80s were very straightforward. They're very uncomplicated.
Yeah.
Helmet designs now are computer generated. I mean, they look, as a piece of art sitting on a display cabinet, look fantastic.
But they all look the same.
There's no identity.
Exactly.
Identities have been lost.
I mean, from your day, you could always tell who Graham Hill was because it was a quite simple, very navy blue, couple of white strips for the London Rowing Club.
Yeah.
Boom, job done. And it's great to see Lorenzo Patrese picking up his father's helmet design and running it because, again, very simple, white with the blue lines of varying degrees of width. It's very distinctive, very iconic. So there is a little bit of traffic jam work going on here between two Porsches.
Yeah, tripping over one another, and that's frustration because, look, okay, it's an hour-and-a-half session. But you're going to come in and say, I lost so many laps because.
Derek Pearce not quite getting out of the way in time for the liking of Dennis Olsen there. So that was a bit of a headache. And there is the Pro-Am category leader, Ivan Giacomo, the Swiss driver for Car Collection Motorsport. And of course, there are 5 cars across the Pro-Am Cup. So Ivan Giacomo is currently the man who leads that charge at the moment. Stefano Comandini in the BMW Italia Ceccato is second at the moment in class, 39th overall, just a whisker in front of Adam Ballon in the Barwell Lamborghini. Then the Get Speed Mercedes of Aaron Walker, the number 2 car, in 4th in category, 52nd overall. And then you go back to the ST Racing with Rinaldi Ferrari, with Samantha Tan behind the wheel. So Ivan Giacomo breaking into the top 20 is always very positive for the Pro-Am squads. He's not far away from that, is Ivan Giacomo. They just need a little bit more strength of speed. In terms of how far away from the fastest time, they are, well, 1:47.4 compared to a 1:46.1, so they're not massively far away. They're
1.6 seconds, but it's the number of cars between Quickerston where you are, so
Indeed.
there's probably about 20 or more cars in between, and that wherein lies the problem, because if you're not starting in, let's say, the front, let's be generous, the front 5 or 6 rows of the grid, you will find it really difficult to make progress, and you'll almost go through the half of the first stint before you'll find yourself able to make any sort of real progress, because you just have so much traffic ahead of you, alongside you, and behind you.
Well, let's talk about how competitive this grid is for 2023, because the biggest gap between one car and another car that we have actually got in the top 10 is between Mauro Engel in 2nd and Mattia Drudi in 3rd, and that's just over a quarter of a second, 3/10 of a second.
3/10 of a second, yeah.
But in relation to the entire field, from Raffaele Marcello in that Mercedes that we're looking at now, up in 1st position, all the way down to David Schumacher in 16th position, there's a second covering all of them. That's how competitive this championship is. Indeed,
and it's only early days.
So Raffaele Marcello, watch the commitment here through Parabolica. So you're gentle in, but then you really hit the power halfway through, and that it unsettles the car a little bit, but he trusted the throttle to get him through.
Yeah, and it's sort of, there was a hint that he might be making. I didn't want to say he's coming in because he still was carrying sufficient speed. Again, one of the things the driver will do for the team is to simulate what would be a racing in-lap rather than an in-lap during a session that is only sort of, in effect, doesn't qualify for anything other than just getting information.
You're absolutely right, because if you don't practice that,
you have to practice, and that's what Marcello did. He came through and exited out of Tamburello at race pace, and then he peeled across to get into the inside of the demarcation line that takes you into the pit lane, then has to nail the brake pedal to get the speed down to 50 kilometers per hour.
I mean, this is essentially a pit stop simulation in race, isn't it?
Very
what
much
they're doing.
Yes. And it's all practice, and it's what makes perfect.
What I noticed about it, though, is when Raffaele Marcello got out of the car, he wasn't rushing. He was just taking his time. He was fast at it. It was quick, but he wasn't, there wasn't a stupid amount of adrenaline through it. And I actually find that the pit crews that moderate their breathing, moderate the way they get out of the car, hand over, they do it just that tiny little bit slower. We're talking like a couple of tenths of a second per movement in and out of the car slower. It's actually more efficient, so you get a better pit stop out of it.
I mean, look, it's the same in the racetrack. You can be spectacular.
Oh, into the gravel.
Oh dear. Oh dear. That's gonna. Derek Pearce has put Stuart Parker's car into the gravel, and it is buried up to the axles.
That could be a red flag, couldn't it?
It'll certainly be. It most likely will be a red flag, because the quickest way to get that car retrieved is to just stop the session. Yep, just watching. Oh, backwards, coming out of Lesmo 2.
There's way too much speed on turning.
It's just carried too much speed in the back end, it just wouldn't respond. So the car is there. I mean, it's not that far away from the racetrack, but the car is bedded into the gravel, so that's going to need a snatch vehicle to retrieve it. There we are. The quickest answer was to throw a red flag. The clock will continue to count down. We've still got 38 minutes of the session remaining, so it'll take 5 or more minutes, maybe a bit more than that, to get the car pulled out, and hopefully there will be no gravel then left, or residue of the gravel on the exit of Lesmo 2.
So red flags here at the GT World Challenge Europe opening round of the championship at Monza in free practice. Let's have a look at a replay in the Retifilio. So we're going to see, oh, look at that. How close were we to the mother of all accidents in the Retifilio?
It happens regularly. I'm sorry to say. And the 99 has still got Lorenzo Patrese listed as being behind the wheel. And I just said a few minutes ago what an impressive job he was doing. Now, whether that was him or not, there's Raffaele Marcello.
Looks like, yeah, I think he is still behind the wheel.
Yeah, having a little chat to say, yeah, the car, as you can see, under braking, whatever. This pairing, and Jules Gounod has been an absolute, had a fantastic year. He did have a nasty moment at the Nürburgring a couple of weekends ago when he was doing one of the VLN races there, and he came up against a slower car, and Jules was fully committed and loaded, and it was a big old accident. So he had an overnight in the local hospital, but immediately onto social media, thumbs up, plumbed up with every cable and wire you can imagine, and then turns up at Open Park a weekend later.
It's amazing how these guys get their energy back so quickly. So the marshals have already gone to work. This should be fairly straightforward as a cleanup, actually, because while it's embedded in enough that we need a red flag, that doesn't look like it's going to be too arduous a job for the Orange Army to get that out and get the session up again in about 5-10 minutes time.
Yeah, I just wonder whether they'll put the car down on the grass just in front of the gravel bed, or whether that will be removed from the action in general.
What a shot.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing. That's we never ever get to see a pit lane from a drone angle, or from a drone, let alone a drone angle.
That's a Hollywood shot right there.
That is like really, I mean, if you just took a single frame of that, I mean, it's just an amazing shot. We don't get to see this type of thing. And another innovation in this year with SRO.
Love it, absolutely love it. Hollywood comes to Monza with a shot like that as Derek Pearce's Team Parker Racing Porsche is lifted out of the gravel, and I think they heard you, John. I think they're trying to move it to the grass.
Yeah, the concern would be that if it's put on the grass, then when Derek Pearce gets to drive the car back, he needs to be aware that he will have a shed load of gravel in places you don't think gravel can get, and those cars that then will come around will not be terribly happy if they find the exit of Lesmo 2 gravel laid.
Now, of course, what we have to remind everybody, of course, under free practice regulations, is that when there's a red flag, the timer continues to tick down. It is not stopped.
No.
So we are still going.
I mean, it's what, 3 minutes? There were 38 minutes and a few seconds at the point the red flag came out. We're now just down to 35. I mean, just 3 minutes or so. So the snatch crew out at Lesmo 2 have done a very good job to get the car retrieved, and whether it will be released and let Derek Pearce drive it back to the pits, or whether it'll be placed behind the barrier and that'll be the end of its session. So again, this drone shot, you can see to the right of the frame there is the pit lane, the pit straight. This is the return leg coming out of Ascari all the way down into Parabolica. And there's something about Parabolica. It's one of those corners, it's one of the most famous corners of any circuit anywhere in the world. Well, the car is on the grass.
Can it move now? That's the thing.
It ought to be able to move, but just clearing away just being told to wait as we cut back into the pit lane to come to you racing. Fred Vervish.
These are essentially three drivers that, well, with the exception of Christopher Haase, of course, who has quite a bit of experience in GT, but he's essentially giving these two a crash course in how to be competitive at the front in GT World Challenge, isn't he?
Yeah. Fred Vervish, of course, spent all last year being teammate to Valentino Rossi, and it worked very well, but I think that ultimately you would like to be in a partnership where you feel you've got a chance for overall victory. As Timo Boguslavski slips the 88 Mercedes back up to the head of the pit lane exit, and so he will get the initial benefit, but of course by the time he completes the lap there'll be other cars. Again, that drone shot, you can see that white area, that is the banking that goes behind the trees, and I mean the place is just phenomenal.
And it goes, that's actually the banking that goes over the top of the bridge before the braking point for the Variante Ascari. So that shows you the expanse, you know, the vastness of that oval. As we watch Derek Pierce get the car back to the pit lane, just trying to make sure that the car can still do what it's supposed to do on the route back to the pits. But obviously the statement of intent from Timo Boguslavski, meaning he wants to get out onto the circuit pretty darn quickly. How big a hiccup is this for the teams, where we've got a red flag of about 5 minutes? If you're in the middle of a particular scheduled program in the testing, how big a problem is having to wait around for 5 minutes?
It's a break in your rhythm. So teams have got a program, they work their way through. Suddenly there's something interrupts it. It might be a short break. This is going to be a relatively short break. It's now, well, roughly about 6 minutes. So it means that you may have to readjust some of the things that you had planned to do. Maybe a run that you've just put when Timo Boguslavski is going in, maybe his run will be slightly shorter, or if it's not shorter, then somebody else's run is going to be shorter. So it has a bearing on the rhythm of the session, but of course it's an unofficial session as such, and therefore it doesn't count for grid position. So everybody's in the same situation. But if you're further down the field, I'm just looking to see where the 51 Ferrari is. It's still down on 46th position. That's the car that had Robert.
Well, Timo Boguslavski is going to be in the car, but Raffaele Marcello is down in pit lane with Gemma Scott.
Jules, great to be back for another season and looking strong already. You guys have been at the top of the timing board pretty much the whole session.
Yeah, it's looking good. Good to be back with Acodis. The last time here we finished second, I believe, in 2021, and it's always iconic to come back for the first race in the season in Monza. You do your first outing, you can even see some rabbits running around in the forest, so it's always very nice. And yeah, we know Acodis, how strong they are. The car felt really good this morning, so I'm really happy at the moment.
You know, some of us have had a winter break, but you've been super busy over the off-season for this championship, right?
I quite had a break of driving because I didn't drive yesterday, but I drove the day before in Silverstone. So no, I had an amazing season so far with winning Daytona, Bathurst, Kyalami in Pro-Am, and the other successes in British GT. So, you know, with Mercedes AMG, we have the chance to drive a lot. And I remember back in the days in Bentley, when we had less races, I was always very jealous of the Audi drivers and the Mercedes driver driving all the time. And now I'm one of them, so I'm enjoying a lot my life and super happy.
Living your best life. Thanks a lot, Jules.
Exactly. Thank you.
Jules Gounon speaking to Gemma Scott. Apologies there. A bit of brain fade on my side. But yes, Jules Gounon so alert that he can even spot the various flora and fauna and wildlife around the circuit as he's going around.
I mean, listen, when you get into a racing car and you're out on the circuit, the amount of adrenaline that's coursing through your system is just remarkable. So every element of your body, your hearing, your smell, your taste, your sight, everything is magnified, and things that you would imagine, how would a racing driver be able to spot a rabbit, wherever it may have been? It wasn't on the racetrack, might have been on the grass verge. But that's what adrenaline does. It just, it is the most amazing, naturally produced hallucinogen that you can imagine. It is, fantastic. I've tried to maintain the production of it, but if you're not directly behind a wheel, it's quite difficult. But it being in the commentary booth has its moments, I must say as well, Jake.
I'm very glad to hear that. Very glad to hear that indeed. Right, it's open season out on the back straight up towards the Parabolica as everybody realizes, oh, cripes, we've only got 30 minutes of running left, so we better make use of them. And it's looking pretty busy out there as the drivers return to the circuit. So far, a fair few crews in the top 10 have not returned to the circuit just yet. Maro Engel and Russell Ward have not gone back out onto the circuit, nor has Simon Gachet. Lorenzo Patrese, after that very scary moment at the Rettifilio where he nearly wiped out another Audi.
Yeah,
That's also...
I would like to know what caused that, because it looked as if he didn't slow the car down. Now, whether there was a technical issue in the car or whether it was simply an error on the part of Lorenzo Patrese. But, I mean, it sort of caught us unawares, and probably it caught the other two Audis in the same moment. I mean, they wouldn't have known about it. Just suddenly, whoosh, down it came, and it was very close, as you pointed out, Jake.
I mean, if we play devil's advocate and stand by Lorenzo Patrese there and say that wasn't driver error, what on earth could have caused that?
Well, these cars run ABS brakes, so whether there's an issue with that, sometimes we do, or we have had issues with ABS braking. Cold tires, maybe making a misjudgment just on the ability of the car to brake, having maybe brakes at a given point when you're on a run, when the tire was warm, so if the tire temperature was down. But there was no wheel lock, which makes me think it wasn't a cold tire issue. It was maybe potentially either a driver error, a simple driver error, or something like an ABS or an electronics issue that would have had a bearing on the ABS.
Well, we've had some very interesting information from Gemma down in pit lane. The number 51 Ferrari has no radio at the moment, which is a very difficult situation for them, because obviously the free practice, that's when you need the radio more than anything else.
Well, it doesn't make the car go quicker, that's for sure. But that car, Nicholas Nielsen, Robert Schwartzman, I mean, that ought to be a front-running car, yet it's all the way down in 46th. Hard to explain. I'm sure the team can give us a reason for it at a later date, but right now I had hoped to see Robert Schwartzman right up at the the sharp end, because that's what he is. He is an outstanding young potential star of the future.
Yeah, they apparently have no radio and they are struggling with setup. Robert is quoted as saying everything's been dumped on them at once, making everything very difficult. Bless him. Very, very much burning the candle at both ends today, of course, Ferrari. There is Romain Leroux in the Bullet Racing Aston Martin. They are the crew that is currently bookending at the bottom end of the table at the moment. Their best time is a 1 minute 50.4, so that's a good 4.2 seconds away from the pace.
Yeah. Oh, there we are. Just again, I mean, not even going at race speed, just all of a sudden, Christopher Mies, for some strange reason, I don't know, it's not like Christopher Mies to do that, but just to go back to the Aston Martin, a few moments earlier, we'd seen the Aston Martin getting it all wrong, coming up into a Ascari, scampering across the gravel and almost losing it on the exit body. Yeah, just in the middle of the racetrack, so that's going to get kicked by somebody. There we go.
I don't know whether that's...
Picked up by two cars.
I don't know whether that's carbon fibre or whether that's a piece of a tyre, or if it's just a paper bag or something.
It looks more paper bag.
It does.
Plastic, or if it is carbon fibre, it's a very light part. The way when the cars went over it, it didn't shatter into a squillion pieces. Makes me think it's maybe something like plastic.
Now that's the kind of problem that if that catches in the radiator, you've got a real problem, isn't it?
Anything gets into your cooling system, brake cooling, radiators, is not going to be ideal.
Aurélien Panis just having a conversation with his teammate there. So we're going to see what these guys can do. Obviously the number 9 Audi going very strong. Now this is a bit of a moment for the Lamborghini. Whoopsie daisy. And just about got away with not looking to see whether they were going to get overtaken.
Yeah, and coming, that's a 63 car again. And coming off Lesmo 1 and then swinging back into the middle of the racetrack.
Mechanical problems there.
Is that a tyre or a mechanic? Is that the
I think that's a puncture. I think you're right. I think that's a puncture.
Yeah, it is. That's right. Actually, it's the right front. It's a right front.
It's the right front. So we're going to see what happened there to the Porsche to have that big issue. And we're going to see what happened up into the first corner. Oh, the mother of all lockups.
Well, that's just going to scrub the tyre all the way through the tyre, the tread, and ultimately lead to the tyres deflating.
Oh, it's not even moving at all now, look.
No, it's just locked. It's whether... No.
That's not moving at all.
No, the right front is fully locked.
I've never seen that in quite such a magnitude before. I've seen drivers locking wheels into the first corner, but I've never seen it stay locked once you start turning in. That's a very bizarre incident, unfortunately.
It is, and it's...
and that's the leading car in Pro-Am, that's Ivan Giacomo.
That's strange. That is strange.
And of course now they've got two choices. Park it at the side of the road, or desperately try and bring it back to the pits to get it fixed so they can go back out again. And they've chosen the latter option, which is high risk.
Well, but if it is a hub wheel issue, not a tyre issue, then it doesn't matter, the tyres are rubbish. The only thing that's going to be left is a rim with a big flat spot on it as well.
And then, of course, you risk damaging it on the way back to the pits as we look at Marco Mappelli.
All the way down in 45th position. Again, a car that you'd expect to be well up. And what's it doing down in 45th position?
Yeah, you would expect to see them right up in the echelons of the top 20, wouldn't you?
K-Pac Racing is an American-based team, we know win races left, right and centre. So Marco Mappelli, Frank Pereira and Sandy Mitchell, Scott. That should be a competitive car, certainly a top 20 car without any question.
Mercedes cars bearing down on the number 5 McLaren, which is still having its headaches, I think, the Optimum car. They've managed to get the Optimum Motorsport car now up into 48th position, Sam DeHaan by the wheel, but this is not going according to plan for Optimum, is it?
No, I mean, it's just, if you're getting out of sync with all the things you try to do, you're firefighting an issue, and at the same time, look at the 3 abreast almost coming down into the Roggia chicane. So if you're firefighting an issue and you're still trying to cycle your drivers through, and so it's an hour and a half seems quite a long session, but you're never going to be satisfied with the length of time.
So into the second Lesmo. This McLaren is just...
That's the 32 all over the back.
It's like they've just thrown the anchor out the side of the window, isn't it? Because they're just plummeting. Every car that gets near them, they just storm by.
So the lead BMW isn't, in fact, it's the...
You've got to go all the way down to 19th.
Well, it's the 32 cars. It's currently Charles Verts behind the wheel.
So let's see what's happened to the number 40, because they're having a little bit of a moment. A complete washout in the entry to Valiante Ascari.
Yeah. And then on to the very, very wet grass, then back onto tarmac with wet tyres.
Oh, Mattia.
And the smoke, there was a car that just came through the final part of Ascari, and blue smoke coming from it. Now, whether that was, again, a tyre issue, a body rub issue, or something else, just caught a very momentary glimpse of it.
A mistake from Mattia Drudi, and he's brought it straight back into the pits. So, yeah, a little bit of a lackadaisical moment for Mattia Drudi, but full credit to the Orange Trees All One team. They are right up in 3rd position overall. So when you're pushing the limits, trying to see what the car can do, obviously those little mistakes are going to creep in.
Indeed. The Windward Racing 57 up to 4th place was still at Russell Rose actually did that time. Ninji Donja behind the wheel now. So just driver changes, but car positions remaining the same. So Mercedes technically would be the front row of the grid. The first of the Audis, Matteo Drudi, then the third of the Mercedes. Then 4 Audis in a pack chasing between 5th and 10th place.
Nice to see Lucas Stoltz behind the wheel of the 777, the Almanar Mercedes AMG. This is the first time we've seen him behind the wheel in this practice session. So he obviously gets the final leg, if you like.
Well, that's just a long-standing partnership. Maro Engel, Lucas Stoltz with Fabian Schiller being brought in as the middleman. But Stoltz and... I'm just watching through the chicane. So Maro Engel, Lucas Stoltz, we know from sprint events. Lucas Stoltz behind the wheel, but the times, sector times, 4/10 and 7/10. Traffic and part causing not being able to run that little bit quicker, but give him a clear lap and see what Lucas Stoltz has got.
Well, the Optimum McLaren is not having a particularly bright day at the office. It's got even worse because I've just been told that Sam DeHaan has been given a €750 plus 1 BWP speeding in the pit lane penalty. So very much not good. So let's talk us around this amazing Monza circuit on board with Christopher Mies into the first chicane. What a great lap.
Okay, into the first chicane. Compromise because you've got 2 cars directly ahead of you, but typical Christopher Mies, very neat, very precise. But he's a driver who will be looking beyond these 2 cars and thinking about where can I get past coming through the long right-hander on the Curva Grande, carrying more speed, but having to go the long way around, but gets up alongside. No, he doesn't. He's backed out of it. He's decided, no, I can't do it. Maybe the compromise has already been set in this lap, so he will look elsewhere. Runs very wide at the exit of the second chicane, but stays within track limits now down into Lesmo won, again just trying to get the nose of the car in. So it's about really just waiting for the opportunity. The best opportunity will be here. Look how much quicker he is coming through Lesmo too. The Lamborghini just didn't have the pace, and Christopher Reese then gets that clean overtake as they run down under the bridge that carries part of the old bank circuit and up into Ascari. Now get the nose in, you can run the curve there, it's quite a shallow curve, then the transition back to the right, and from here on it's flat out through the exit. Be careful because you will be monitored there if you run too wide. That's one of the areas where track limits are going to be penalised. Then the shortish run down into Parabolica. You can brake certainly about 100 metres if you're brave maybe, and you've got the grip a little bit later. Gets the nose into Parabolica, release the car, let it float out to the outside of the corner and take off as much lock as you can bear. Use the throttle in effect, and he comes into the pit lane. Well done, Christopher Mies. Well, that's an example of what it's about.
So Christopher Mies, who is of course sharing the car with Patrick Niederhauser and Simon Gachet. There's been a little bit of a fisticuffs into the first corner. What is it with the green Lamborghini today?
I don't know what it is. I mean,
the 63
car.
The
63, that car has been in all sorts of battles and whatever.
He's in proper flotsam and jetsam mode, isn't he?
I mean, the car is Jordan Pepper apparently behind the wheel of it right now. That's down in 22nd place. I mean, again, why is that car so... I mean, okay, it's early days. It's not important. It doesn't qualify for grid positions or anything. But that car down in 22nd position, I mean, I do not know. And that's just a little bit of homework for Iron Lynx. I mean, Iron Lynx last year, of course, ran Ferraris, this year running Lamborghinis. And the reason is they're looking to get their WEC or Le Mans Lamborghini project. They will be running that project. So that was the fundamental reason I understood that Iron Lynx swapped brands from Ferrari to the Lamborghini.
And interestingly, of course, the man that they tripped over there at the first corner was Indy Dontier in the fourth position with Mercedes. So that's going to be a real headache for them. They're going to have a proper grievance, I think, about that, because they're currently leading in class as well.
So in comes Timo Boguslawski. Lo says Jules Gounod. There is Timo Boguslawski, so it is Jules Gounod. So Timo had been in the car, but Jules got back into it.
This is going to be an interesting setup for them. I mean, what must be going through the mind of the driver right now in free practice when you're there in that situation? You know the car's quick, everything seems to be going according to plan. Do you start getting confident, or you just start getting worried? You know, things might start going wrong.
Trying to read the face of Timo Boguslawski is difficult because he's not an expressive or an emotive kind of person. Oh dear! Hey, is that contact? It is. Just nudge the right front of the nose into the barrier. It's slight damage, maybe a bit of carbon fiber bodywork.
Yeah, Leonardo Guarini just getting it very wrong there in the AGS Lamborghini. Just about scraped the wall, so I think they'll just about get away with that, actually.
It should get away with it. I mean, it'll maybe need a bit of attention when the car is brought back into the pits. But there was no bodywork, it was dislodged, so the car can continue. He probably thinks nobody saw it, by the way.
Yes, nobody saw that. Nobody saw that. It was fine. Don't worry. Nothing to see here. Into the chicane and going very deep into the chicane. The number 42 Mercedes, I think that was, just getting it a little bit deeper than necessary on the brakes. But it's so difficult when you've been running for so long to time the brakes just right.
There are two dynamic motorsport Porsches as we go back to the 46.
Yep, Maxime Martin is behind the wheel now.
So the Belgian driver, you almost call him veteran, but in fact he's still, in relative terms, a very young and certainly a very capable driver.
Do you know, I'm glad you raised that, because I was having a conversation with one of the team yesterday, and it was fascinating. We were talking about the age of the average driver at this level. Now, obviously in GT racing and in sports car racing, it's been the common thing for many years now. Once you've finished your single-seaters or your touring car program, you go into GTs and you're there through your late 30s, early 40s, through to your 50s, and you have a great, great career. But nowadays, again, there seems to be this trend of put a young whippersnapper in the car. There is so many young talents coming through, and they're almost nudging the sort of the drivers that could go into their 40s and 50s and still have a great progressive career. What do you think of this, John? Because obviously you look at people like Fittipaldi and Andretti, who were able to race in sports cars for many, many years, very successfully. And with all this young talent creeping in, that can really change the sort of the dynamic of the modern GT racing scene.
I mean, it's always been depending whether you finish your career, have a single-seater career, then you move into what I call a tapering down phase in your career. Just watching the McLaren running behind the 32 BMW. Miguel Ramos, there he is, in the 188, so...
I mean, I tell you what got me thinking about it, Valentino Rossi coming in, you know, a legend of the sport who is an elder statesman of racing, but obviously he brings something, not just talent, but also he brings a fan base with him to the sport. So surely a team like, you know, a BMW, a Lamborghini, a McLaren, you would want a big name to come in, to bring fans in, to bring revenue in, to bring excitement in that sort of style.
Yes, there's a lot of what you say is right. Sometimes, you know, a legend, let's say, who comes in, actually might become the story more than the brand becomes the story. So there's always that balance between the two values.
True.
Louis Mackils, who's racing here with his son. So that's another little sort of human interest story.
Indeed.
And a fantastic competitor for Ferrari, winning championships and race, or winning categories, not overall 6 wins, but certainly winning his category on many, many occasions.
Worth pointing out as well, this is the AF Corsa squad, as always, but they are running the 488 car in that car rather than the 296, which the pro teams are running.
Yeah.
So
but inevitably, the 488 will be superseded by 296s, but actually this car, the 488, is still a great race car, and it's a great race car for that level, you know, as opposed to the pro. It's just a really, really well-balanced, well-sorted, confidence-giving race car.
Oh, indeed. You've got to remember they won the World Championship in 2021, as well as obviously, you know, great successes in GT3. They've had a fantastic run with this 488, and I think it's going to be, I think it's still got life left in it. You know, I think there's still a little bit more to come from this 488, even though the pro teams are now switching to the 296.
Yes, I mean,
still a little bit for this to give.
Yeah, but now that our AF Corsa particularly are committed to the 296, that's where the future for the Ferrari brand is going to lie. Rob Collard in the SRO Motorsports Lamborghini.
A man you know very well from his touring car days back in the day.
I mean, it's something like that, yes. But Rob, effervescent and loves his GT racing.
I swear that Rob Collard has got a painting in his attic that keeps changing, because he doesn't look like he's aged any day in the last 20 years.
He's a very fit man. He does a lot of training and keeps himself in extremely good shape. But he just loves, I mean, touring car racing is where he's probably best known. But having made the adjustment into GT... And
oh, we've got yellows into Variante Ascari.
Yeah, but somebody's been off into the gravel. But wherever it is, whoever it was, has cleared off.
Rob Collard still doing a fair job as he continues his way down the back straight.
Well,
11 minutes 40 to go.
Getting close to the final 10 minutes of this 90-minute session. And we're seeing just pretty much teams. Not much has changed in the overall positions in the top 5, top 6 over the course of the session. It's just that different teams have given their drivers the options to run, but pretty much the times that were set early in this session when probably the tyre was either new or its freshest, and that's why we saw that very quick time of 1:46.1, which still remains to be the fastest time of this session.
Well, it's about this sort of time in a practice session that I start looking at the gap from first to last, and I noticed that it's down to 3.1 seconds, which lets me know that the Bullet Racing Aston Martin have done something that every other team on this starting grid would give their eye teeth to do, which is improve their best lap time by a full second. So they've got that gap down quite significantly in terms of the percentage of the lap.
I mean, just what can you say? Everybody's doing their best, and whether you're at the front or the back, if you can find a second a lap in one of these cars, that's a massive gain you've made. But probably you were starting from a rather low threshold in the first place. That's, I think, maybe the judgment will be made in that one. If you look at the McLaren 159, still pounding around and waiting to see McLaren Nicola Schergaard in 39th position, his sister McLaren, and up into Ascari. So that little curve on the inside you can run the curve on the inside of the transition to the right and then the exit. But look how busy the racetrack is.
Yeah, it's getting to be a proper whirlwind of a traffic jam, isn't it? Let's look at the top 5 per class at this point. It is still the Acodis ASP team Mercedes at the top in pro and overall. Raffaele Marcello currently behind the wheel. Their best lap of the session was on their 7th lap, a 1 minute 46.187, which has not been bettered at any point. Only the Almanar Mercedes AMG has matched it, and that is the 1:46.262 lap time. Currently, Lucas Stoltz is behind the wheel, but there is 75 thousandths of a second between those two cars. And then a further 0.3 of a second back, you've got the next best car. The Tracer Orange 1 Audi, currently being driven by Riccardo Fella. The ComTU Racing Audi is 5th overall, but 4th in the Pro Cup class. Christopher Haase behind the wheel as we get on board with the number 44, the CLRT machine. And I think this is Hugo Chevalier. It is indeed. So Hugo Chevalier behind the wheel, and obviously sharing that car with Mathieu and Palette. 5th position in the Pro Cup class at the moment is the Santaloc Junior Audi car, currently being piloted by Christopher Mies, and that is 6th overall. That's the Pro Cup top 5. In the Gold Cup, it is Indy Doncia in the Windward Racing Mercedes that is currently the fastest car on track, although that lap was set quite a while ago now, 1:46.6 from that particular car. The Boutsen VDS Audi of Aurélien Panis currently sits in 2nd, with the second of the Windward Racing Mercedes is 3rd. It is Miklas Born at the wheel currently. And then the ComTU Racing Audi number 21 is 4th, and the WRT BMW number 30 is currently in 5th position, just ahead of the Iron Lakes Lamborghini and the Optimum Motorsport McLaren. In the Bronze Cup, it is currently the Tracer Attempto Racing Audi that heads the way, currently being piloted by Andrei Mukovos. The Dynamic Hubert Porsche of Marius Nacken in 2nd, and Igor Valilko in the CSA Racing Audi, currently 3rd. The Pure Racing Porsche of Alex Malikin is there in 4th position. That's the 911 car. And then the Garage 59 McLaren number 188, that is Miguel Ramos, the car that had all of its bronze test times disallowed yesterday. They are currently sat 5th in the rankings. In the Silver Cup, it is the other Trezor Attempto Racing Audi that is on the top spot there. That is currently being piloted by Pietro Deliguanti. The Grassa Racing Lamborghini of Sam Neary currently sat 2nd. The Mad Panda Motorsport Mercedes AMG, that's been very quiet actually all practice session. Magnus Gustafsson just getting on with it, with the car currently sat in 26th overall, 3rd in class. And then Loris Hezemans in the ComTU Audi and the GRT Racing Lamborghini number 85 of Kevin Berlo there in the top 5. There is Augusto Farfus, and beside him it is Maxime Martin, so Valentino Rossi is having another play.
Just another interesting little concern. The lead Ferrari is down in 35th position.
That's a very good observation.
And it's Louis Machiels who is the quickest, or that car driven by Louis Machiels is
the 488.
Yeah, 488. The two factory, the two 296s, Alessandro Pierguidi in the 71 is in 37th position, and the 51 Rivera behind the wheel right now is in 46th. So the 296, the latest incarnation, Ferrari is not, you can see it just, well, there it is, 3rd of those cars. They are nowhere near the pace. And that's Rivera behind the wheel. That's the car that is currently 46th overall. And that, for me, is a massive, massive disappointment, because I've came here thinking these things are going to blow the doors off everybody. So obviously there's still a considerable amount of work to be done to get the car A to the standard of the performance of the 488s, and therefore onto the level of everybody else.
Now what does that relate to in terms of pace? Well, they are 1.6 and 1.9 seconds off the pace of the fastest car. Now, you cannot call that sandbagging in free practice the day before the big race. There is definitely something not quite right.
It's whatever the reasons are, whether it's within the chassis, I can't believe it's the power unit as such. So whether they're running with a lot of fuel, which I wouldn't have believed they would have done, because it wouldn't appear to me the reasons right now. You want to get all the information in the best conditions that you can get, and so that looks like it just currently is down on pace. Up the inside goes Lucas Stoltz. He was hesitant to know whether the Porsche was going to concede the corner or not, and because it's a non-time session in the sense that it doesn't relate to anything in terms of grid position. So Lucas Stoltz was just being cautious, as Porsche in 18th, that was Alfa Ranauer and the Ranauer Motorsport car. So Lucas Stoltz continues on his way, but will have been compromised in terms of sector time, just being uncertain as to whether the Ranauer driven Porsche was going to concede. He looks across the line, Let's see what his last lap was at, well, 149.5. His previous last lap was 147. So he lost almost 2 seconds in that last lap, just trying to find a way around the Porsche.
Yeah, you've got to be very cautious, because the last thing you want to do 5 minutes to go in the session is pick up damage for something sloppy getting past the back marker. We've had an off at turn 10, which I do believe is the exit of the Variante Ascari.
Yes, it is, and that's the is it car 2?
That's Aaron Walker, a very dear friend of mine. Aaron Walker, who's one of the new faces in GT World Challenge. He came up from the world of karting, was a prolific driver in Europe in the IAME European season, was a great contender with the Tony Kart operation from Strawberry Racing, and has now come into the world of GT World Challenge with the Get Speed crew in the Mercedes. And yeah, he's pushing hard. He's had a little bit of a wayward moment there at the exit of the Variante Ascari. The 91 car has just cut turn 5. That's at the Variante della Roggia, the exit, isn't it?
Yeah.
So the 91 car cutting.
Just keeping an eye on the Porsche, Ben Barker, number 55 in 9th position. So again, sector times you can see 7/10 down sector 1, 8/10 in sector 2. So not going to see any, well, no improvement whatsoever, I would imagine, for this car currently. Well, it's comfortably inside the top 10, but you know, when you say comfortably, it's comfortably in by 78/100 of a second. Well, it comes across the line, and
yeah, no change.
No change whatsoever.
Alfred Renauer was the one who cut Variante della Roggia.
A lot of drivers. Oh, 63, the Lamborghini now coming in slowly.
Don't tell me it's out of fuel.
It could be out of fuel. You know, it's just difficult to think.
Well,
the way that car has been all over the place at different points during.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think what else can happen to the Iron Lynx crew that hasn't happened in this free practice session. Why can't they run out of fuel? It's the only thing that hasn't happened.
I would be very surprised if Iron Lynx let it run out of fuel, but it does look as if it's got no power, and it's come to a standstill just before the pit lane entry line.
Oh, that's the worst possible place, because that really does consider things like a full course yellow or a safety car. Well,
teams can't get to the car until the car comes into the pit lane.
Exactly, they can't attend to it.
That's what a car's length outside the pit lane.
Well, a fairly perfect session as far as the Acodis ASP team are concerned. All three drivers look particularly quick: Jules Gounod, Raffaele Marcello and Timo Bogustovski. They've all done a very decent run out there at Monza, and their fastest lap was back on the 7th lap out on the circuit, a 1:46.1. Their sector times look pretty good, to be fair, looking very strong, but these guys look pretty hot as well. Dennis Marshall finishing off. Oh no, this is the Trezor Attempto Audi, I apologise. The 99 car. This is the silver leaders. Pietro Deliguanti sharing the car with Acker and Patrese. So they look particularly strong, and I have a feeling they're going to have a very solid race of it. But yeah, the big talking points then from this free practice session: the Lamborghini having all kinds of problems at Iron Lynx, and the lack of... Oh, that's the other one! That's the GRT Lamborghini slowing now. Dear, oh dear. Lamborghini are not having a great day at Monza.
That's a tire, that's a rear tire, I think. The smoke coming in from the back.
Yeah, you're right.
Rear tire, I suspect. So hard to tell, just that camera angle didn't pick it up, the right rear.
Well, if you are Lamborghini or Ferrari in the boardroom, you are having a very long face at the moment, aren't you?
Well, let's say they might need a cup of coffee just to refresh themselves. So that isn't a tire. The tire hasn't gone down.
Is it a wheel bearing, maybe?
Something. Could be a wheel bearing, could be a suspension component that's allowing the wheel to rub against the bodywork. The tire does not look as if it's a tire that's deflated.
Well, this is the temptation, isn't it, to get it back to the pit lane? But let's see what happened.
So wait to see. Smoke's already coming. You can see there's something coming that right rear. And
that would have been the first he'd know about it, wouldn't he, on turning?
There's so much smoke coming from that rear corner, it's difficult to tell. I don't think the tire's on. To me, it looks as if the suspension has slightly...
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it's collapsed.
Or something's collapsed at the rear. Yes, it looks. That's what it looks like.
Oh,
it looks, you know, if you want to be on my oath, Your Honour, that looks to me like it is a rear suspension component.
Yep.
That is not in its proper position.
Oh dear.
It hasn't allowed the wheel to get totally out of line, but what it's doing is it's putting a massive amount of rear camber onto it, massive amount of rear toe. So just come back really, really cautiously before any more damage is done. And we've just got 1 second to go, and the checkered flag is now out.
Yes, indeed. And the first car to take it is the Optimum McLaren of who's behind the wheel now. Charlie Fagg is behind the wheel, and they have slumped to 49th position. Not where the Optimum Motorsport McLaren team wanted to be. I mean, that is fairly sub-optimum, isn't it?
Well, it's the slowest of all the McLarens. The quickest of all the McLarens is the 188 Miguel Ramos. That's the Garage 59 car, which is in 15th position. Then you've got the Sky Tempesta down in 25th. Then you've got to go all the way down to the second of the Garage 59 cars on 39th. And then the number 5, the Optimum Motorsport is of the 5th. 5 of the 5th. 5th of the 5.
I was trying to figure out if that Lamborghini's still moving, and there goes the Audi off the road. Oh dear, right off the road.
Well off, and that's again in Lesmo too, but he manages to keep the car. He went in a straight line and he's coming out in a straight line.
Yeah, that's Christopher Mies in the Santalock Audi, of course,
Sorry,
going off.
Christopher Mies?
I'm afraid so.
What are you doing, Christopher Mies? That's not in your phone book at all. So anyway, no harm done, and hopefully not too much gravel drag back onto the...
We'll give him one mistake for the weekend.
No, but it's... maybe just the limits are so fine that... He's gone through the grass as he came back on the track.
Yep.
Now he's got a radiator grill full of grass.
Well, let's see what he did do.
I suspect it is into Lesmo 1. Then once he catches the curb, and there we go. Instant snap oversteer. And so he can't get off the grass because he can't turn or steer on wet grass. So he has to make his way through the second part of the gravel on the exit of Lesmo 2. But because he went into it in a straight line and he's found bits of the gravel that are actually shallower than... Oh, dear me. That was a nasty moment. And he clips the marker cone.
Indeed he does.
And that'll not be much fun for Christopher Mies. He's sitting there and he's virtually powerless to do much about it, except power the car through at the gravel exit of Lesmo 2.
What's going to be more irritating, of course, is the mechanics are now going to be dragging all the stones out of it. That's going to be the big difficulty. Well, there you go. The first Fanatec GT World Challenge Europe, powered by AWS Endurance Cup free practice session of 2023. Mercedes lead the way with their 2 cars of Acodis ASP and the Mercedes Almanar cars, first and second at the present moment. The Audi in 3rd position is the Trezor Orange 1 Audi machine. The Winwood Racing Mercedes gets the top gold prize for the time being. In 4th position, the ComTU Racing Audi in Pro, ahead in 5th, ahead of the Santalock Junior Audi in 6th. Then the Trezor Attempto Audi of the bronze category. They lead the bronze category in 7th position. And the silver leaders, the Trezor Attempto Audi in 8th. The Dynamic Hubert Porsche in front of the Boutsen VDS Audi number 9, who are second in gold. Then we have the CSA Racing Audi, the Mercedes-AMG Acodis ASP Mercedes, the Puro Racing Porsche, the Dynamic GT Hubert Racing, and the leading McLaren, the Garage 59 Miguel Ramos car. And then the Winwood Racing Mercedes that you see in the 16th position. 17th is the ComTU Audi, the Herberth Porsche, the leading BMWs, 19th and 20th. And then we have the Grasser Lamborghini and the Iron Lynx Lamborghini, 21st and 22nd. The leading Pro-Am car is the Car Collection Porsche, Niki Litvala finishing off the session. The Rowe BMW number 998 of Dan Harper, 24th. The Sky Tempesta McLaren, Jonathan Hoy finishing off in 25th. The Mad Panda Mercedes, 26th position overall. And then the Team WRT BMW number 46, Valentino Rossi, Auguste Farfus and Maxime Martin, 27th. Then Audi, BMW and Lamborghini finish off the top 30. And then we get some worrying signs after that, don't we? Because we get the Grasser Lamborghini and the Dynamic Hubert Porsche in the silver category. The Pro-Am BMW Italia Ciccato squad in 33rd. The Get Speed Mercedes, and then it is the leading Ferrari, 35th position for the AF Corsa Ferrari squad, and they are in the 488, the leading 296, all the way down in 37th position behind the Parker Racing Porsche in their bronze category. The Boutsen VDS Audi 38th in front of the Garage 59 McLaren number 159, and then the AF Corse Francorchamps Motors car, the number 51, all the way down in 40th. Long faces at Ferrari for sure. Rutronic Porsche, 41st with Thomas Preining. The Barwell Motorsport Lamborghini, number 78 in Pro-Am, is 42nd. Then the Santalock Audi, the bronze Thieber Motorsport Mercedes AMG, Ralph Aron at the wheel at the end. Walkenhorst BMW in 45th. And then we have the Capex Lamborghini in 46th from CLRT Porsche, the Iron Dames Lamborghini, the Optima McLaren, the WRT BMW, the Haupt Mercedes, the Get Speed Mercedes AMG, and then the AGS Lamborghini with the ST Racing Rinaldi Ferrari. And booking ending at the field end, it is the Bullet Racing Aston Martin, 3.1 seconds adrift from the top spot. Not bad, eh? 55 cars covered by a whisker over 3 seconds. That is Fanatec GT World Challenge.
And you run out of expletives just to say how competitive this field is. Now, actually, I suspect by the time we get through qualifying, that 3.1 second differential first to last will probably be somewhere in the 2 second range. It is just nuts competitive.
So fabulous performance then for the contenders. They really gave us a very interesting Fanatec GT World Challenge Europe Endurance Cup free practice. Lots to talk about then in free practice. A very exciting session it turned out to be, with every single car and driver combination getting decent track time over the course of the 90 minutes. Several surprises, but several great battles to come in qualifying for certain. Some big players made some big moves. Mercedes were pretty quick for both the Codis ASP number 88 and the Treble 7 Almanar squad cars. Lorenzo Patrese acquitting himself well at the Treso Retepto Racing Audi. They were the fastest car in silver. Ivan Giacomo getting himself up there with the Car Collection Motorsport Porsche team. They were the fastest in the Pro-Am. Problems for Derek Pierce as he spun the Parker Porsche and brought out a brief red flag. But there were problems all around. Ferrari have not got the 296 up to speed. They are outside the top 20 overall. And this wheel locking issue for the leading car in Pro-Am definitely causing a headache for the number 24 squad. A minor spin for the Lamborghini. They can just about get away with that one, the number 8 car of Leonardo Guarini in the AGS team. But it was definitely Mercedes all the way, and a fantastic run in particular for the 88 car of Marcello Gunon on Bogustowski. They are the leaders going into the next part of the weekend, and certainly the Mercedes very fast indeed, with Audi very much in the march. Mercedes and Audi filling the top 8 cars overall. The top Porsche is 9th, the top McLaren is 15th, and the top Ferrari is scratching their head, wondering what to do next. There's going to be a very interesting weekend here at Monza.